Joining us now on the programme once again, the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland. Mr Buckland, great to have you on this morning.
Thank you.
And of course, big a day for you, big set of announcemements, which we will deal with in depth. But I do want to start with that Oprah interview and Harry and Meghan's accusations of racism and indeed of bullying. I'm just wondering, have you seen the interview?
No, I haven't, I'm afraid. Like many people, I was busy last night dealing with other matters, work chiefly, so I've not seen it.
Sure. I do wonder, though, whether or not you feel that such is the nature of the allegations, particularly when it comes to Meghan's mental health, the accusation of racism, whether you feel that, the palace almost needs to respond to that.
Well, I don't think it's right of me as a member of the government to start commenting about matters that are for the royal family. I think it's a long-established precedent. I really am not able to comment. I don't know about the detail of it. I've not seen the interview, and I don't think it would be right of me to add my fourpenneth to these matters.
I understand the point, because it is a carbon copy of the point that was made by the Prime Minister at the Downing Street News Conference yesterday. He said that he has a rule that he doesn't talk about the royal family. I mean, it's obvious that that rule, if it exists, gets broken quite a lot. He often invokes their service, he often invokes their patriotism. Even on the matter around Prince Andrew, he said that, that the royal family is beyond reproach. I mean, on that, do you think that the royal family is beyond reproach? Is that why you don't feel it's appropriate for you to comment?
Well, I support the work of the Queen and the royal family. Their devotion to public duty is well known. The hard work that they put in every year, even during the COVID crisis, is well chronicled. I think that the Queen epitomises public duty and public service, and we all look up to her and admire her for that, as we do other members of the royal family who work hard. And that element of public duty is at the heart of what makes the monarchy work here in the United Kingdom.
Well, let's turn our attention very directly to your own set of responsibilities, your own duties. A big day for the Ministry of Justice. Tell us a bit about the plans that you're announcing.
Well, we've got a major new bill today that is a joint bill with the Home Office, so it covers a wide range of new measures, most notably on sentencing. I will be introducing important changes to the sentencing, for example, of child killers, who will now be able to receive whole life orders under a life sentence. We're going to change the way we sentence children, particularly with regard to the most serious offence of murder. But also we're doing a range of changes on issues like causing death by dangerous driving, increasing the maximum to life, and a new extension of the offence of sexual activity in abuse of a position of trust, covering people like sports coaches and faith leaders, which up to now have not been in the same category as teachers and social workers, for example. So a wide range of important measures that I know will help to make our streets safer and increase public confidence.
Indeed, and on the latter of those, the loophole around sports coaches, faith leaders, the NSPCC very firmly in your corner. They're delighted by all of this. But I suppose that some people will ask, well, look, there are perhaps another couple of categories that might have been included: music teachers, driving instructors. Could you just explain the rationale for not including those in this?
Yes, well, what we're going to do, without being too technical, is legislate immediately on sports coaches and music teachers. We'll have a power in the bill to include in the future other categories, but we need to make sure that the evidence base is very clear. There's obvious concern about some of the activities in those other areas you talk about. But remember, we're dealing with young people of the age of 16 and 17. In many other respects, of course, they're allowed to have sexual relations, even to get married. And therefore, this is a very sensitive area. And we need to make sure that whilst, the abuse of power, which this is often sadly about, needs to be rooted out, we've got to maintain a balance between the rights of young people and also the need to protect them from harm.
The bill also granting new powers to break up disruptive protests. Two words spring instantly to mind: extinction, rebellion. This is a direct response to the climate movement, isn't it?
Well, it's a response to the fact that whilst freedom of expression and the right to protest are at the heart of our civil liberties, we've got to think about the sometimes huge inconvenience caused to other people going about their lawful business. And these particular provisions dealing with the need to notify the police as to the time during which the protest will take place, other measures relating to ease of access to Parliament, which is a fundamental democratic right in itself, and also issues relating to noise, I think get the balance right between freedom of expression and, of course, the rights of other people as well, who choose not to take part in these events, but who often face great inconvenience and sometimes worse as a result of what happens.
There is, I think, even by your own admission, there's quite a lot in this bill that deals with longer sentences for particular crimes. Are longer sentences going to change anything? Is this just all about the punitive aspect of the judicial process? I mean, the Prisoners Reform Trust says there's not a shred of evidence to show that this runaway inflation, their words, in punishment reduces crime. I mean, is there evidence that we will see a reduction in crime?
Well, I think the most obvious evidence is that if you incarcerate people who commit offences that are a danger to the public and a threat to the public, you're reducing crime, you're protecting the public. And I think one of the most important functions of our prison system is indeed public protection, and we need to emphasise that. But at the same time, there's a whole raft of initiatives that we're taking with regards to rehabilitation of offenders. So in this bill, for example, I'm going to be taking powers to extend the use of curfews, which I think is a very effective way of dealing with people in the community. And there are lots of non-legislative initiatives I'm taking on mental health, on addiction as well, to deal with some of the root causes of offending and to rehabilitate those who are capable of change. The sad truth is that there is a group of people in our society who are genuinely bad and who we need protection from. And this is what this bill seeks to address.
Minister, let's talk about another aspect of responsibilities, COVID and COVID-19 in prisons in particular. Can you just give us the kind of latest statistics, the latest figures that you've had in terms of how many cases, how many fatalities we've experienced in the prison system?
Yes, well, over the last year, we've lost just over 80 prisoners as a result directly of COVID. A number of others, about 20 or 25 others, died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. That's out of a population over the year of 140,000 people who've been through the prison system. Whilst losing anybody is a very difficult and sad moment, the work that's been done by prison staff and the authorities to bear down on COVID has been important and remarkable. The way in which it was done by quarantining new entrants and by really ramping up the testing programme, which has happened to great success, has helped us bear down on this disease. We've had to take measures to restrict a lot of the activities of prisoners. We've been able to do more in this lockdown than we did before, and we're learning all the time. But the story in prisons has been one of control. And whilst it has been very challenging for staff...
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, Minister, but we're running out of time. But just in terms of the push from JCVI to perhaps allow prisoners to be vaccinated on a prison-by-prison basis. They go in, they vaccinate everyone, they come out, rather than the way in which it's working at the moment, following the kind of the most vulnerable categories. Just explain that decision. I mean, a number of prison officers, including one of my acquaintances, have pointed out that, the prison officers told LBC they felt like lambs to the slaughter. My friend said something a bit more sweary than that.
Well, I think it's important that we absolutely drive on with the priorities that the JCVI has set. And as other ministers have said, it's important that we adopt their advice and carry it through. And I think that in large measure, we're already working through the prison staff who fall within the existing categories. The next categories, of course, will follow. And
didn't the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisations, didn't they recommend that local vaccinations teams should be given the flexibility to deal with prisons in a single go, not work down the list?
Well, I think the important point here is that prisoners will not get priority ahead of any other part of the community. A number of prisoners have, of course, been vaccinated because they fall into the most vulnerable category. And I think following the community is a sensible way to go. Of course, we'll always listen to and look at the evidence very carefully. And my particular priority is to make sure that prison staff get inoculated as quickly as possible.
But just on the question that I asked, the JCVI did recommend that local vaccination teams should be allowed to go into individual prisons, vaccinate everyone. I mean, that's the case, isn't it? They did recommend that.
Well, I think where we are is that there's been an interim report. There will be a final decision made later this month. I think it's right that we've set out the broad contours here of the vaccination programme, which has been so successful thus far. And I will repeat that my priority is to make sure that prison staff are vaccinated. And that prisoners shouldn't get ahead of the queue, but should be inoculated or vaccinated in accordance with the priorities set for the rest of the community.
Sure, but just on a related topic and still regarding COVID, I mean, the Prisons Watchdog says that prisoners have been locked in their jails for more than 9/10 of the day to keep them safe from COVID-19. I understand that there is not an awful lot of sympathy for people who find themselves in prison, but that isn't acceptable, is it?
Well, I think, like the rest of the community, prisoners have found that the restrictions have been greater on them than would be normally the case. In this particular lockdown, there has been opportunity to do more activity, so essential work has been carried out, and there have been more activities and educational opportunities. And of course, we've increased video and telephone communication with families as well. I think prisoners understand the need for those restrictions and have accepted that it's in their own interest that they are kept safe. And we've worked very hard with them to make sure that even though the restrictions might be greater, there have been things for them to do and occupy themselves with. Very tough calls were made early on in this pandemic, but the results have been important, and I think they are a testament to the achievement of staff and indeed the prisoners themselves in making sure that establishments, whilst we've seen outbreaks, have not resulted in the sort of fatalities that could have been the case had those corrective steps not been taken.